In the opulent heart of Port Harcourt, where wealth builds fortresses tall enough to hide the deepest of secrets, a single sheet of paper was about to shatter a family. A medical report. A cruel twist of biology that would turn love into suspicion, and a home into a battlefield. Charles Fiberessimer was a man of logic. A billionaire who built his empire on facts. But that night, logic failed him. His daughter, little Ibir, had been diagnosed with sickle cell disease. The SS genotype. But Charles was AS. And his wife, the elegant Sautournier, she was AA. In the rigid mathematics of genetics, an AS father and an AA mother could never produce an SS child. The math said she was unfaithful. His pride said she was a liar. He never stopped to ask if the math could be wrong. He never considered that medicine is an evolving science, not a perfect religion. He simply looked at the weeping woman he had sworn to protect, and walked away. He left behind his weeping wife. He left behind his sick daughter. He left behind his name. Overnight, Sautournier Fiberessimer lost her husband, her home, and her high-flying corporate career. She was forced to trade the marble floors of the Fiberessimer estate for the quiet, modest walls of a bungalow. She took a job as a schoolteacher just so she could hold her daughter's hand through the endless cycles of fever, pain, and hospital visits. Ibir was suffering, and Sautournier was suffering alone. But destiny does not always leave the righteous in the dark. Hundreds of miles away, in the bustling city of Atlanta, a phone buzzed. It was Asoher Ogbide, athletic, busty, with high cheekbones and a calming smile. She saw the news of Sautournier's downfall. And she immediately called her sister friend, Belima Brown. They were alumni of the prestigious Unity boarding school in RBU Low MR. They were the Abu Babes. And Abu Babes do not let their own bleed out in the dark. When Belima and Asoher walked through that door, it was as if the cavalry had arrived. Belima, fiery and fearless, with a heart as big as her designer handbags. And Asoher, the sensible, grounding force. They found a shell of the woman they once knew. But they didn't come to pity her. They came to fight. For a fleeting afternoon, they took Sautournier away from the sickbed. They sat her under the Port Harcourt sun at a lovely French bistro. They raised their glasses to the Abu Babes. For a moment, the champagne dulled the ache. But the shadow of Ibir's illness hung heavy in the air. The normal medicines were not working. Ibir's pain was getting worse. The crisis came like a thief in the night. Ibir's joints swelled, her fever spiked, her tiny body racked with agony. Sautournier was paralyzed by fear. But Belima grabbed her phone and her car keys. There was only one man in Port Harcourt brilliant enough to unravel this mystery. Dr. Umo Etim. Dr. Umo was a man of science, but more importantly, he was a man of compassion. He looked at Ibir's file and shook his head. The standard sickle cell narrative did not fit this child's presentation. Sautournier, he said softly, we need to run deeper genetic tests. We are missing a piece of the puzzle. The wait was agonizing. Weeks turned into an eternity of sleepless nights and sterile waiting rooms. Until finally, the phone rang. Dr. Umoa's voice was urgent. "Come to my office. It is urgent." And just like that, the pieces of the puzzle began to shift. Sitting in that luxurious office, the three women held their breath. Dr. Umo looked at Sautournier and delivered a truth that would change their lives forever. "Ibir does not have standard SS disease," he began. "You are AA, Sautournier. But you carry a hidden trait. A hemoglobin disorder called beta thalassemia." He explained that Ibir was AS. She inherited the sickle gene from her father, and the thalassemia gene from Sautournier. Combined, it mimicked the SS disease perfectly. The math wasn't wrong. The doctor's initial diagnosis was wrong. Sautournier had never been unfaithful. She was innocent. 4 years of abandonment. 4 years of raising a sick child alone. All because Charles Fiberessimer refused to look past his own pride. The tears of vindication quickly turned to a furious, roaring anger. Bellamar Brown was on her feet. There would be no quiet acceptance. There would be no dignified silence. Charles Fiberessimer was going to be brought to heel, and Dr. Umo was going to provide the leash. They demanded a DNA test, and they were going to deliver the results themselves. Bellamar did not call ahead. She marched into Charles's corporate fortress, past his security, and slammed the medical files onto his mahogany desk. "Read it," she commanded. "She is AA. You gave her the sickle gene. Ibir has beta thalassemia, you pompous fool. She didn't cheat." Charles Fiberessimer, the master of the universe, crumbled. The truth hit him like a physical blow. He had destroyed his family over a medical anomaly, over his own arrogant assumption. The DNA test confirmed it. 99.9% match. He was Ibir's father. He was the cause of her illness. He was the architect of his own ruin. In the days that followed the DNA results, the Grand Fiberessimer estate felt more like a mausoleum. Charles sat in the dark, drowning his pride in expensive whiskey. But his mother, the regal Mrs. Fiberessimer, offered him no pity. She looked at her towering, accomplished son and saw only a fool. "You abandoned your wife," she whispered, her voice like a dagger. "You abandoned your sick child. Because of your arrogance. You are a fool, Charles." And for the first time in his life, he had no defense. Before the truth had set him free, Charles had tried to play the bachelor. His best friend, Alex Diet Spiff, had set him up with Ine Pepple, a wealthy, selfish lawyer with a squeaky voice and an obsession with status. But sitting across from her, listening to her talk about mergers and material things, Charles felt nothing but a hollow ache. How could he be here, while the mother of his child was fighting for their daughter's life alone? Pride is a heavy burden, but guilt is heavier. The next morning, Charles did not send his driver. He did not send a lawyer. He drove to the modest bungalow himself. He stood on the porch, holding coffee and Ibir's supplements, waiting for a woman he had no right to ask for forgiveness. When Sautournier opened the door, her cat eyes were guarded, cold. But she stepped aside and let him in. Charles Fiberessimer had built an empire by mastering complex data. Now, he turned that relentless focus onto his daughter's illness. He sat in Dr. Umoa's office, not as a wealthy donor, but as a desperate student. He asked about hydroxyurea dosages. He demanded to know about folic acid absorption. Sir Tournier watched him, stunned. For 4 years, she had fought this medical war alone. Now, the man who had abandoned her was arming himself for battle. But words and medical charts are not love. Love is the midnight vigil. Love is the heavy, exhausted hands placing a warm compress on a child's aching joints at 3 in the morning. Sir Tournier stood in the doorway, watching this giant of a man hunch over their sleeping daughter. The ice around her heart didn't melt, but it cracked. Just a fraction. Weeks turned into months. The new regimen, the relentless care, and the combined genetics of beta thalassemia management began to work. And then, a miracle painted in the light of a Port Harcourt morning. Ibia walked through the garden. Without crying. Without pain. No pain today, Daddy, she whispered. Charles squeezed her tiny hand, his eyes glistening. Sir Tournier leaned into his arm. It was a silent truce, forged in the fires of shared sacrifice. Seeing the transformation, Mrs. Fiberessimer made a decree. "You are moving back to the estate," she commanded. "I will not have my granddaughter in that bungalow." But Charles, finally the man Sir Tournier deserved, spoke up. "We will move back, Mother. But only if you treat Sir Tournier with the respect she is due. She saved our daughter." The matriarch looked at the tall, elegant woman before her, and bowed her head. She did. "Welcome home, Sir Tournier." Returning to the estate was not a magic cure for 4 years of broken trust. The walls were grand, but the silence between them was loud. Yet, every night, Charles would stand behind her at the vanity. He would take the brush, and gently, reverently, brush her curly hair. It was an act of devotion. An apology spoken without words. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he would whisper. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, the walls began to fall. The breaking point came on a quiet Tuesday evening. Sir Tournier looked at the man who had broken her, and saw the man who had rebuilt her. The diplomatic distance, the soft-spoken defenses, they crumbled. "I forgive you, Charles," she wept. The words hung in the air, a benediction. Charles let out a breath he felt he had been holding for 4 agonizing years. He pulled her close. The battle was over. The healing had begun. News of the Fiberessimer reunion spread like wildfire through the elite circles of Port Harcourt. Alex Diet Spiff and the hysterically laughing Boma arrived at the estate to celebrate. The house, once a tomb of sorrow, echoed with the sounds of champagne corks popping and joyous laughter. The Abu babes, Bellamar and Ace O'Hare, reclaimed their place by Sir Tournier's side, sipping cocktails by the pool, proving that true friendship weathers the darkest storms.